for the space shuttle program, and the majority of space shuttle missions departed Earth from this launch pad, including the final space shuttle mission, Atlantis STS-135, in 2011. In 2014, SpaceX signed the lease agreement with NASA for this launch pad, and we then began to make safety and functional upgrades. So what you see there is the base of what used to be the fixed service structure from the shuttle days. So everybody might recall that iconic pad from the shuttle days, near and dear to my heart personally. And we did have to remove the rotating service structure portion of the pad for safety, and also it was just unnecessary for Falcon 9. But the bones of the fixed service structure are still there. What we see here is a view of the elevator shaft, and this is the same elevator shaft used these astronauts getting their first look at Falcon 9 on launch day. There it is.
The famous lean back.
This must be breathtaking for them. You can almost see the size of how, we're close up on the crew right now, but how far they have to lean back to look at the top of the vehicle.
It's a shame they don't wander over and look at the business end of the Falcon 9. Kate, you're talking about the history of the pad. They built what's essentially a giant concrete structure on the Florida land back in the early 60s. And you've got about a 5% grade that we saw them drive uphill to get up to the crown there. Mm-hmm. But if you go over to where the Falcon 9 is, centered up above the flame bucket, that's about a 13-meter drop down to the bottom of the fire brick. So, that gives you an idea of what it takes to channel the nearly 2 million pounds of thrust.
I just want to point out, it looked like we had a team lean back there. I don't think we've seen that yet.
And this crew grew so close to each other. And if you haven't seen the Netflix documentary, Countdown: Inspiration for Mission to Space, you can really see how they grew as a team and a family, and you can even see it here on the screen.
For sure. Something that I really appreciated, I forget who pointed it out, but it was one of these four, noted that each of them are in a different decade in their life. Yeah. So Haley is 29, Chris Zembrowski is 41, Dr. Proctor is 51, and Jared Isaacman is 38. So they're all in a different decade in their life, and this mission has brought them together, and the camaraderie is evident pretty much every step they take.
And it looks like Dr. Cyan Proctor and Haley Arsenau are the first to enter one of the elevators, waving.
Oh, just kidding. That's happened, everyone. So they're going to take this elevator up to the 255-foot level. And so this elevator shaft is not marked by floor levels, but rather foot levels. So they're literally riding up to 250 feet above ground. The exit of those elevators are there. And they will exit the elevators and then climb up a small set of stairs to the level above, which is where the crew access arm. And the reason for this is that Falcon 9 crew loading is a little bit higher than where the shuttle crew loading occurred. So the 255-foot level is where shuttle crew, and there they are, Dr.
That's a
Cyan
fast
Proctor.
elevator.
It is. It really is. I've been in it a few times. You leave your stomach on the ground when it takes off.
Yes, so Kate, you were mentioning some of sort of the guts, so to speak, are the same. The elevator is the same, minus some maintenance and needed maintenance. Yeah. And so there's a phone at the fixed service structure as well. That is also the same phone that astronauts in the Apollo days would use to make their final phone call before boarding the vehicle.
Of course, and the webcasts back in the Apollo days were a little different than the webcasts now, and so it was a true surprise to the families when the Apollo crews would call home and say hello before hopping in their spaceship. Now it's less of a secret, but yeah, Andy, you're right, that's still the same phone. So what we see here is the crew kind of hanging out there on this level.
And again, as I've mentioned throughout this, every step of this process is written into the procedure. So they actually put in time to make sure that they have time to call a family member or friend.
Absolutely. So it looks like Chris and Jared have now gotten into the second elevator and are now making their way up to the 255-foot level.
This is written into. They actually put in time to make sure that they have time to call a family member or friend.
Absolutely. So it looks like Chris.
Mission to space. This is the very first all-civilian crew to orbit, and exiting the elevator is Chris Zembrowski, the mission specialist, with Jared Isaacman, the commander of the mission today.
Hey, Darge. Yeah, we've been streaming to both.
And we mentioned a little bit about the closeout technicians and suit technicians. Again, they
YouTube
are there
and Twitch for
to support the
about,
astronauts,
9 months.
ingress, get buckled in. Before we close the side hatch, they'll be supporting with an interior foreign object debris checkout, and then also assist with the side hatch close. You'll notice some markings on the floor. These are very important. In case of an emergency, this is the egress direction that the crew and support team will need to follow to make their way back down and be safe.
Yeah, these arrows actually point to what are basically slide wire emergency exits. So it's what it sounds like. It's a basket on a slide wire. They are the same baskets that were utilized again in the shuttle program. They have been repurposed and modified for safety features, and then of course raised up to this level from the 255-foot level. So only utilized in the case of an emergency. But we've been talking a lot about how the crew has been undergoing training since March, and actually egress training is part of it. So they are prepared for all nominal situations as well as off-nominal ones.
Hopefully that's better.
In the unlikely event of an emergency.
Better
and that's
noise
what those
levels.
arrows are essentially pointing to is the quickest path to safety.
Wow. It's so cool
What
that
you're
they're
seeing
here.
on your screen
It's,
is the Inspiration 4 crew, all 4 members standing by
Pretty
as
amazing
each
mission.
one of them gets to make their phone call on the historic phone that has been there since the Apollo missions. I think it even still has the same.
I'm amazed that it happened this fast
analog
after
buttons on
Crew
there,
Dragon
so no
was
digital iPhones there. It's the original phone
approved
that they get
for
to utilize.
Can confirm
Human
it is
spaceflight.
a rotary phone.
Love that.
So yeah, we are under the 3-hour mark now. The crew woke up about 4 hours ago, performed some medical checks. We saw them walk out of Hangar X, hopped into their Teslas, and made their way to the Falcon Support Building, where they donned the space suits that you see on screen right now.
the space
They
crews.
took another ride to Launch Pad 39A, went up the
Oh, wow.
elevator,
There you go.
went up a flight of stairs, and now
They're in
they
the
are
access
making their
arm.
way through the crew access arm. That is the corridor that you see on screen right now.
Man,
So
Haley's
what a sight
tiny.
to see with them
Jeez.
hugging as they're walking. Oh, they look so excited.
So these are essentially the last steps that they will take on planet Earth for the next 3 days.
Wow.
Obviously taking a moment to enjoy the view, smell the roses if there were any.
They're just absolutely excited and ecstatic.
That's got to be a hell of an experience.
Yeah, their excitement is radiating. It's making
so
me
cool to
very
see how
excited. We're getting very close.
happy
Again,
they look.
just under 3 hours until liftoff. And some dancing.
You see the ninjas in the background there? Gotta love the
Haley's
SpaceX
getting very
ninjas.
excited again. She's going to be the youngest American in space and the first with a prosthetic.
So what Haley has just entered into now is what we call the white room, and it's an environmentally controlled environmentally controlled room. It keeps out dust, dirt, humidity, bugs, of course, because it's Florida, and essentially keeps it environmentally stable for the crew. If you look just above Dr. Proctor's helmet there, you
Dragon.
can see a seal. It's a black seal, and it basically seals in the room that gets installed and compressed against the capsule to maintain the cleanliness of the spacecraft. And here we can see one of my favorite traditions for SpaceX crewed flights. They are adding their signatures to the wall of the white room. So because this is the
She put Inspiration
first,
4 beside her signature. That's
orbital
cool.
all-civilian mission, they're signing their names next to the X logo. For previous NASA crew missions, the NASA astronauts have signed their name there next to the NASA meatball to the left.
Yes, and all members of the crew will get an opportunity to sign. And if you are wondering, this is penciled into part of their procedures to grab the Sharpie and sign the wall.
Yep, it's actually written in for the advanced team, which is the group of people that arrive to the pad prior to the crew, and they are the advanced team prepares the pad and everything in the white room with all the tools
the big
necessary
status monitors there, neat too.
for
It's
closeout
really neat.
operations. And Sharpie is one of the tools listed in the procedure for the advanced team to ensure is there prior to the crew's arrival.
And one final hug. So in the background, around the seal, you can see that is Dragon, and the side hatch is open. In a few minutes here, we will be seeing the crew enter or ingress the Dragon with the assistance of the closeout technicians.
Also affectionately known as the SpaceX Ninjas.
SpaceX Ninjas, yeah.
The SpaceX Ninjas.
And there you can see Jared Isaacman and Chris Dombrowski also making their way across the crew arm to the White Room to join the rest of their crew. Also getting a moment to take in some of the sights. And it's such a nice day over there in Florida. It's
a great day.
As John mentioned earlier, we were only 10% likelihood of violating launch conditions, which is a rarity for Florida, especially this time of year. So, you know, if you've got a blue sky day like
sorry,
they have,
Darge. They're space ninjas, so they automatically are the best ninjas ever.
Yeah, 10%.
Doesn't matter if you can see them.
Ascent weather, contingency splashdown, and planned splashdown in 3 days. So you're really having to get everything to come together. So I hope we can use this day. It looks great.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in selection and ultimately just
there's
giving
Jared
the
Isaacman.
final go or no go.
Jared
decision
Isaacman
point
is
for
the
launch
one who
day.
arranged this whole thing,
Splashdown weather
and is
in
doing
3 days
the
was also
fundraiser
an
for St.
important
Jude
factor
Children's
for
Hospital.
consideration, because you know that's part of the journey as opposed to missions to the International Space Station, where the NASA astronauts are typically on board station for a couple of months. We don't have to worry about splashdown weather then, because who knows. But at this point, because the astronauts are coming home in 3 days, we did have to do quite a bit of evaluation for those splashdown conditions prior to ultimately proceeding into what we see here today.
You can see on your screen that
2 hours and 46
Dr.
minutes to
Cyan,
launch.
Proctor, and
Already
Haley,
$100,000 has been
Arsenau
raised
have
today.
Ingressed the vehicle. Again, ingress is just a aerospace word for entering. They're now working on getting strapped into their seats, and it looks like Jared and Chris are awaiting their turn to ingress Dragon.
Yeah, you might have seen that one of the SpaceX ninjas, let's call it, was inspecting the floor where Dr. Cyan was walking prior to getting into the capsule.
SpaceX Dragon for initial contact.
Wow.
Dragon, I have you loud and clear. Good morning.
Oh, that's so cool.
Good morning. We've got you loud and clear, too. It's a beautiful day.
Hey, Dr. Proctor.
It sure is. Welcome to have you aboard.
So that was Dr. Cyan Proctor just doing an initial comm check with SpaceX core Sarah Gillis back here in Mission Control, and we just saw Jared add his signature to the wall, and Jared and Chris are now getting ready to ingress to the capsule as well.
Yeah, we'll be hearing more of those comm checks as we get closer to T0. One thing to note are those beeps that you hear. Those are Quindar tones, and those help to clear the air. That way the message can be sent and received as clear as possible. But again, as we continue to get closer and march towards T0, we'll be hearing a lot of both Sarah Gillis and the astronauts communicating back and forth to make sure all systems are good for liftoff.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll hear quite a bit.
Yeah,
of
I can't wait to see
communication,
the
as you said,
couple
Andy,
either.
and,
It's going to be really
the
neat.
Communication from Dragon to anyone and anyone to Dragon is actually structured. So as you just said.
And yes, no, we don't want the
that
couple
Quindar
to
tone,
open.
That ping, which is an
We want the
indication
nose to
of
open.
incoming comms. And then whoever is calling states the destination of their call. So in that case, they called SpaceX, and then they identified themselves as Dragon afterwards. So we heard the ping, SpaceX Dragon, indicating the Dragon capsule was calling SpaceX.
On your right-hand screen, we've got an inside look live inside of Dragon. We have Haley in seat number 1. She called it the window seat. Looks like she's got her 5-point harness already on. Dr. Cyan Proctor sitting in seat 3. That is the pilot seat. And looks like she's getting waiting to get her harness strapped on shortly here. Chris just entered the vehicle as well and sat in seat number 4 and looks very excited.
He did say he was going to have a very big grin on launch day.
Yeah, he did.
And he does. He is in seat number 4 as the mission specialist for this mission.
And now about to ingress is Commander Jared Isaacman.
This is so exciting to finally see this crew getting into their seats. These are their customized seats inside of Dragon. Again, the spacesuit and the seat are basically designed together, and they're custom made for each of the crew members. We have the technicians there to help get them strapped in, get their harnesses on, get their umbilical ports plugged in.
Yeah, the seats are really interesting because they all look the same. However, each, as you mentioned, yeah, they are customized basically in terms of small, medium, and large in 3 different ways. So there's the bucket where you actually sit. There's the length of the footrest, as well as the length of the armrest. So each of those 3 components are all sized small, medium, and large, basically, to help make sure that each crew member can fit comfortably in their seat and safely.
This is a really cool view of the side hatch. If you look closely on the right thigh of everyone's spacesuit, there's a port. It's a black port. Jesse mentioned an umbilical. That is where the umbilical will plug into each of the crew's respective suits.
Hey,
from
Jade
the
Star
chair.
Watcher.
And again, this houses the electronics, things like communication, as well as air in the form of nitrox.
Hey, Bluesy.
And what we see there is the iPad
Molded
that
to individual
Dr. Proctor
butts.
will use throughout flight, like we mentioned before.
I mean, it's important. You got to
she's
mold the
pilot,
butts, right?
And what we'll see shortly is the rotation of the seats. The seats will be rotated backwards so that the crew will almost be on their backs and allowing them better access to that touchscreen panel there that is above their heads.
Yeah, I think, Kate, when we do we've got the same
I wanna
camera
do this.
angle we've seen
Does
before.
anybody
when we get
can
seat
anyone invite
rotation.
me on one of these?
Also gives you an
Let's
idea
do
of
it.
the cargo that's underneath
Yeah.
that they'll be using during their 3-day orbits around the Earth. So they'll get access to that, be able to unpack it, get out the experiments, get out dinner.
Hey, Jade, do you
things
wanna
like
go?
that.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the cargo beneath the crew in
How about
this
you, Darge?
vehicle right now,
Bluesy?
Dragon can carry up to 7 passengers. For today's mission, we only have 4 crew members, so it's only configured with 4 seats. So where the 3 additional seats are, we have replaced it with a stowage for cargo.
Which is super important for this mission because, like we said before, they're stuck inside Dragon the whole time. There's no getting out this time.
Yep.
Also, Jesse, you mentioned Haley's got the window seat. Just to go back a little bit in
Well,
history, Dragon,
Star
from the
Citizens
very
raised
beginning,
$350 million.
was designed
We should
with
be
the
able to
window
pull
seat.
it off,
In
right?
fact, when they show shots of us here on the mezzanine, we've got the first recovered Dragon right behind us. And so we put windows in that, not because cargo needed a window to look out.
The block of cheese.
But,
If anyone's wondering, this flight is probably costing Jared Isaacman about $200 to $250 million.
Space qualified windows early on because we knew when we finally got around to the Dragon version with people on board, they're going to want to look out and see what it's like.
And honestly, if you've been following along with the NASA crew missions that have been going on up at the space station, my absolute favorite views that we've gotten over the last over a year now that we've been operational with NASA crew to the space station.
And of course, he's also donating $100 million to St. Jude.
Taken from inside Crew Dragon, looking through that window and seeing space beyond.
Of course, this time, not only do they have the hatch windows, but they've got the cupola.
The cupola.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, some of them, have got astronomy backgrounds, for example. What it'll be on the night side when they're in eclipse in the Earth's shadow, to where they really can see the stars. In the daylight, people always go, why can't you see stars? Well, the sun is so bright, and, any reflection off of anything just, ruins your vision.
Absolutely.
But yeah, every 45 minutes, you get another sunset. You get into eclipse. And yeah, I'd want to be up in that cupola looking out.
Yes,
looking
please.
at all those
I won't
constellations.
be in the
It's gonna be
cupola.
a very, very popular spot on Jurassic.
Yeah, I'd love this too,
Prime
Jade.
real estate for sure.
I would
This is a really
definitely
cool
do
shot.
this
So on
if
the
I
left-hand
had
side of your screen
a way to do
is
it.
the Dragon capsule resilience. And so that top conical portion, that is the capsule. And
But
that is
hopefully
where the crew
that's where we're
on the
headed.
right-hand side
Hopefully
of the
this
screen
is
currently sitting.
slowly
The bottom
opening that
half
door.
of the Dragon vehicle is the trunk. There is a
I think Starship will help
sort of
once
a
it's
dark
crew
side
rated.
and a lighter side.
a lot
the,
bigger
the dark
vehicle.
side are solar panels, which will draw energy from the sun to keep Dragon powered throughout their mission. But this is super cool because you see the exterior, and then inside is the crew having a jolly old time with the closeout technicians.
It'd be cool to have your very own personal ninja helping you go to space.
While the pressurized section of Dragon, which is the top portion, will be returning to Earth, the trunk will not be. That part is not reusable. Prior to splashdown, the trunk will actually be jettisoned, and the capsule will turn around and expose the heat shield, which is basically right between what we see there. It's a tiny, slim piece of silver there just above the trunk. So yeah, that trunk will not be coming home, but it is a super important piece of Dragon because, as Andy just mentioned, the dark side there, I am refraining my Star Wars reference. I'm saving that for later. But yeah, the dark side that we see there are the solar panels that will be generating the power to the batteries for everything that they need. The crew, like we talked about before, they got a lot of science experiments they're going to be performing, but they're also going to be taking video, need to charge their phones, all that good stuff, of course.
We haven't seen the over-the-shoulder shot where you can pick up the crew displays, and you get more of that once they rotate
anyone's
them
wondering,
into position.
But
one of the things
the
that you
reason
just
why
struck even looking
I'm
at
just going to
this,
turn
if you've been
down
to the
SpaceX
Smithsonian
stream
Air
for a
and Space
second.
Museum, for example, and you've looked, at the Apollo command module.
So, if anyone's wondering, the reason why on this side on view, half of the Dragon trunk is black and the other half is white. The left half is actually solar panels. They're little solar cells that are basically stuck all the way around, so thousands of them probably, all the way around that entire half of the trunk. The other half is radiators. So you have to have a way of getting rid of heat in space. So you need a big surface area to get rid of heat because there aren't many atoms out there to actually interact and take heat away. So you need often as big a radiator as you do solar collection for power.
That'll make this here for them to be right next to each other.
So
one other thing, sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to say there on the left, Dr. Cyan Proctor, the pilot for today's mission, and Commander Jared Isaacman on the right.
Yep. One thing that also strikes me is when you watch some of the videos of the shuttle launches, the shuttle essentially had astronauts on multiple levels. So you have the commander and the pilot up at the very nose of the shuttle, with all of the switches, everything around them. So that means that the poor ninjas in those days had to climb up and, kind of step on everybody else's chair just to be able to pull the straps, make sure that the two folks at the top were tied in. Here you've got all four of them side by side, and at least for the ground crew, the SpaceX folks in the black outfits with the numbers, it's a lot easier. They're looking right at them, and it's not the crowded airplane flight. Excuse me, while I drop my luggage on your head while I'm trying to get it lifted up.
Yeah, that is an important thing to note. Every crew that has flown with Dragon, when they come back, we do get a lot of feedback, and we take that feedback seriously to try to upgrade the Dragon, and even small things like where to store personal items, where the food's located. We want to make sure that the flight with Dragon and Falcon 9 is as comfortable as possible. So reiterating the design is a core principle of Dragon design.
Absolutely. And what
So I wanted to talk to you folks a little bit about a couple things that I'm noticing here. I just wanted to point them out. If you look at Dr. Proctor here, Dr. Cyan Proctor, she's basically the one that the camera's pointing directly at. On her right thigh is what looks like a little black box. That is her attachment to the seat. And it is providing her spacesuit with life support, power, telemetry, communications, the whole 9 yards, everything. It's worth noting that on their way up, they have their helmets closed, and those suits are able to withstand a pressure loss in the cabin, and that one connection on their right thigh gives them life support and power and communication and everything. So pretty cool. On their left thigh is their iPad that they use to go through all the checklists and everything. Provides them with a computer, and they have like a whole pouch under that with a bunch of handy little things. Anyway, thought that would be helpful.
we did recently was a full dress rehearsal with the crew just on Sunday. So the crew got fully suited up and they entered Dragon just as we see them now. But today must feel so different to them because even though they've been in these seats one other time in the suits and we did everything as if it were real, today's the day that they're actually going to space. And so I can imagine that, at least if it were me, that seatbelt might feel tighter and tighter with every minute that passes. I mean, we're just about 2 hours and 30 minutes from launch at this point.
And remember, the crew got the weather briefing as well. And so they know today is a great day for launch. And so it is looking more and more likely as, again, we continue to march down towards T0. Speaking of the suits that you see the crews don right now, we definitely took safety, comfort, and style into consideration. Let's take a look at how these were made.
I think one of the things that was important in the development of the suit was to make it easy to use, something that the crew just has to literally plug in when they sit down, and then the suit kind of takes care of itself from there. So the suit is really kind of one part of the bigger Dragon system. It's really part of the vehicle. So we think of it as kind of a suit-seat system. So the seat that the crew is in and the suit are in a lot of ways working together. And so it made sense that we were designing Dragon in-house to also design the suit.
Our spacesuits is completely designed in-house. It's built here in Hawthorne, California, in the same building as the rocket and the capsule. The spacesuit is custom-made for each crew member, and that is to optimize the fit for the crew member.
We definitely wanted to innovate, and we wanted it to look inspiring, but first and foremost, we wanted it to be safe and reliable. The spacesuit's primary purpose is to protect the crew in the unlikely event that the cabin were to depressurize. But the suit does a number of additional things. It provides cooling and communication to the crew inside of the suit, provides them hearing protection, and the outer layer of the suit is flame resistant, so it provides flame protection as well. When the crew gets in the capsule, they get in their seats and they plug the suit into the umbilical that's attached to the seat. And the umbilical is providing everything that the suit needs. So it provides the avionics or electronics for communications. It's providing the air to cool the suit, and it also provides gas.
Good morning, Dragon. I have you loud and clear. How me?
I hear you loud and clear, Sarah.
And copy that, Jared. Let me know when you all are ready for comm checks.
David will be joining us in about...
Dragon, we're ready for our comm checks.
Copy that. Stand by for umbilical comm check. Commander, pilot, MS1, MS2, comm check.
And Brooke has you loud and clear. How many?
Loud and clear as well.
Leo has you loud and clear. How me?
I have you loud and clear, Leo.
Nova has you loud and clear. How me?
Loud and clear, Nova.
Hanks has you loud and clear. Sarah, how me?
And Hanks, I have you loud and clear as well. Umbilical comm checks complete. Stand by for ground station comm checks. Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
And Dragon has you loud and clear. How many?
Oh, they look like they're having so much fun.
Core loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for Tetris comm check.
So David's going to join us in about 2 hours for about an hour. So from about a half an hour until lunch until a half hour after lunch. And I will be staying on here until SpaceX goes out. It sounds like they are going to go out once Inspiration 4 is on orbit. And I will try and cover the re-entry as well.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
And Dragon has you loud and clear. How many?
Core loud and clear. Tetris comm check complete. Stand by for comm checks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear. MD, how many?
MD loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear. MD, how many?
MD loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear. LD, how many?
LD loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, LD on Dragon to ground. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear. LD, how many?
LD loud and clear.
Dragon, SpaceX. Launch configuration comm checks are complete. Report when ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
And copy that, SpaceX. Step into section 2. SpaceX, Dragon, we're ready for seat rotation.
All right, so the seats are going to rotate into launch position now.
We're T-minus 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 12 seconds, counting down for what is planned to be an on-time launch. T0 tonight is 8 hours, 2 minutes, 56 seconds p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, or just about 3 minutes after midnight Universal Time. Right now, we're looking at a view of the Inspiration 4 crew. They're all in the capsule.
SpaceX initiating seat rotation.
And we are moving into seat rotation now. Everybody is anchored in the seat with the belts. We've done final checks, make sure they are all buttoned up and ready to go. And what we're going to do now is send command to the motor actuators under the seat. It'll rotate the 4 crew. Chris there on the left having a little fun there. They'll rotate them up into the launch position, which also gets them access to the launch displays that are overhead. I think right now they're also just waving out through the hatch at the ingress team that is now moved out of the way to make sure. And now the seats are rotating.
Six-seat rotation is
This
complete.
just takes several seconds to get them in position.
The launch position.
And there you heard a call out from Core to the Dragon crew.
SpaceX, we should
So the team's now in final position. We're right now in the countdown. Typically, this comes at about T-minus 2 hours, 15 minutes. So the good news is we're running about 6 minutes ahead of the countdown. Next major activities up in the Dragon area will be just verifying everything is ready for closeout. We'll be doing leak checks of the suits. We'll be closing the hatch.
Just a reminder,
doing
everybody.
leak checks of the capsule hatch. And eventually,
Dragon
T-minus
SpaceX,
1 hour.
for awareness, our closeout lead is going to be climbing in to look at something on the cargo pallet, just for awareness.
Somebody's coming in. Ah! Just FYI. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Just give me a second.
That's underneath the seats. But as I was saying, at T-minus 1 hour, the plan is the team will leave the crew access arm. They'll get out of the blast danger area, and that'll leave just the Inspiration 4 folks on top of the Falcon 9 for the last 50 minutes or so of the countdown as we prepare to head to space. Status right now, everything continues to look good. Falcon 9 has been quiet since we started the webcast. It'll start to pick up at T-minus 2 hours. We've got a few flight termination system checks that we go through. The biggies will come at about T-minus 1 hour when we're doing Merlin engine checks on the first and second stage, making sure engines are primed in with fuel. And then we'll carry the countdown from there as is typical. So a lot will pick up there. Dragon is pretty much in the mechanical activity right now. Earlier this afternoon, just around T-minus 4 hours, the Draco thrusters, these are the ones that are used for steering, orbit adjust, and to deorbit the capsule. We opened valves and pressurized the manifolds. So the Draco thrusters are in a flight pressurized configuration. And pretty much right now, it is just getting the crew ready and getting the hatch closed and getting off of the pad. On the weather front, no new information other than the weather continues to look good. We've been talking about it. In addition, we are beginning to release balloons to measure the upper altitude winds.
I just wanted to mention that I do recommend for everybody to watch the documentary about this launch on Netflix. It is quite good. It gives you backstory and backstory on all 4 crew members, how this all came to be, what their training was like, what they had to go through, because they did a lot of training. Yeah, it's really great. It's called what's the full title? It's on Netflix. It is called Countdown. Inspiration 4 Mission to Space. Countdown Inspiration 4 Mission to Space. The first 4 episodes are up there. They're about 40 to 45 minutes long. And then after they come home, there will be, I believe, a 5th and maybe 6th episode as well. And they're expected to put out the 5th episode at the end of September. So that is this. Right here. Hello, Jose Antonio Lopez. Welcome. Thanks for watching. And I will turn these folks back on because they're much more important than me talking.
It's too old for her.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 3, suit check preparation.
I kind of am a medical officer, so.
I don't know if we're like completely unified around that. I mean, there is other, sci-fi, spacey stuff that comes before Star Trek.
No, there's not.
Okay.
They don't know they're wrong. Like, that just, they'll learn that over time. Like.
Oh, Jared.
I just love that. And I got to say, that kind of sounded a little Sith Lord-esque from Jared there. But I'm with Jared. I'm Team Star Wars all the way.
Nope.
Yeah, I think I'm staying clear from all the discussions. I'm a casual fan of both, but I know there's passionate fans on both sides. I like them both.
Well, in my case, we're just listening. They're getting ready for suit leak checks. If you look in modern day, every day, I was reading the paper over the weekend, and I saw the new film museum here in Los Angeles. Part of that was described as the Death Star. On the other hand, on the next page in the paper, they're talking about a mansion up in the hills here above LA as the Starship Enterprise. So you kind of got an equal, but in my case, showing my age, I saw the first Star Trek episode on September 6th of 1966. So I'm Star Trek.
Star Trek, John.
Wow, that's
can I
OG.
pick Mandalorian? Is that okay?
Technically Star Wars, I think.
It's the Baby Yoda for me.
Yes, there it is. That one wins over a lot of hearts.
There's nothing wrong with that. So if you've just tuned in, the crew are in their seats. As you can see, they're buckled in. The seats have been rotated back to the launch position. They've undergone
Lower
comm
decks is
checks,
great.
and everybody, it's hard to see from this angle right here, but there's been a lot of camaraderie and a lot of big old smiles on their faces.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to make note of, we saw the crew respond back to Sarah Gillis, the core, with their call signs. So Jared is Rook, Dr. Cyan is Leo, Haley is Nova. And Chris is Hank. So we might hear some names get interchanged, but they got those call signs when they were doing their jet fighter training, which is a really cool sentence to say. Who else gets to do jet fighter training?
They got to fly the jet fighters.
Right, that's very exciting.
That's freaking awesome.
So only 553 humans
Jade,
have
I think
been
we
to
really need to do
orbit,
this.
and most of those traveled as part of government or
You too, Darge.
country-specific missions. As a result, the research conducted on those missions, particularly as it relates to humans in space, is often only accessible by the country or government that conducted the research. Now think about the possibilities if the data from all those missions could be made available to the broader science community for research. Inspiration 4 is a step in that direction.
Once in orbit, the crew of Inspiration 4 will conduct research that has the potential to improve human health here on Earth and for all future space travelers. All biomedical data collected during the mission, things like heart rhythm and rate, blood oxygen saturation, and other things, will be accessible through an open data repository and available for research.
To that end, SpaceX and the Inspiration 4 crew are partnering with TRISH, the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, to collect data and biological samples from the crew before, during, and after this historic spaceflight. Part of NASA's Human Research Program, TRISH is a virtual institute that finds and funds disruptive science and medical technology in order to reduce health and performance.
For good suits.
Copy that, Dragon. We see the same. The closeout team will perform final closeout steps and then exit the capsule. Please report when ready to close the hatch.
Sounds like suit leak checks have been completed. And Trish is a virtual institute that finds and funds disruptive...
Copy that, SpaceX. We're ready for side hatch closure when you are.
Copy that, Dragon.
Pausing for comms. Disruptive science and medical technology in order to reduce health and performance risks in space explorers.
Yeah, as we're getting ready to close out the side hatch, let's check in with Kate to take a closer look at the experiments the Inspiration 4 crew will conduct during their 3 days in orbit.
Thanks, Andy. I'm joined now by Diana Dial from our space operations team here in Hawthorne, and we're going to take a closer look at the research that the Inspiration 4 crew will be conducting on orbit.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me, and great to be here. We're going to be talking about some of the biomedical research experiments that'll be flying on Inspiration 4 today. So off the bat, why are we even doing this? Obviously, our goal is to make spaceflight accessible and safe to everybody. And that means making sure that we understand what happens to the human body when folks go to space. Plus, with a lot of these experiments, we're also getting a better understanding of how to revolutionize healthcare here on Earth.
Now, that seems kind of like an interesting point because a lot of people assume that science done in space doesn't have anything to do with those of us that are still on planet Earth. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the things we see here and how they'll benefit not only us, those of us in space, but also those of us on Earth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so off the bat, the technologies that we use for space, particularly for medicine, are actually miniaturized, they're mobile, and they can be used by non-physician or non-medically trained individuals. So that means that we can expand access to places where otherwise it's super remote, you might not have a medical provider, and these same technologies that we're going to be using, for example, on Inspiration 4, we use in remote care environments here on Earth.
And that
the ultrasound probe they're going to be testing is freaking cool.
In space, weight is everything. So I believe this is an ultrasound reader, and if you're familiar with
plug it into
ultrasound
your
machines,
phone.
they're usually much bigger
It's an
and require
ultrasound.
a lot of training to operate, and not
$2,500
possible to go to space. But
it's insane.
This is actually what's going to be on board Dragon today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the butterfly ultrasound. Normally, you guys may be familiar with an ultrasound that you see at the hospital, and it'll be about the size of this table. But
Hey,
this ultrasound device is not only handheld, portable, but also, as we said, can be used by a non-medically trained individual. So during Inspiration 4, our astronauts are actually going to be doing medical imaging while in space to better understand how body fluids change in the microgravity environment.
Now, in terms of the other things that we have on the table, I feel like, well, obviously the glasses are the coolest looking. We'll get to those. But how does this actually, like, how do they read when they're viewing, the ultrasound themselves? How do they actually get a readout for that?
Sure. So essentially, this ultrasound just plugs into an iPad or an iPhone. And essentially what they do is they'll plug it in, they'll use a little bit of gel, and then actually be able to apply it to themselves to visualize a number of organ systems in the body. So, for example, due to the fluid shifts in space, we want to make sure that we understand how blood flow moves in the microgravity environment, what happens to the bladder, for example, when it comes to urinary retention, and also we want to see how those fluid shifts could affect, for example, intracranial pressure. And so one of the analogous things that we'll be measuring is ultrasound on the eye. So all of these can be measured super easily using this just plugged in to an iPad or a phone.
And of course, that's important because intracranial fluid impacts vision, and vision changes while you're in space.
Absolutely.
No, I want to get to the glasses.
Yeah.
They look like fun 3D glasses, but there's no 3D movies on this particular Dragon mission. So can you tell us a little bit about what those are used for and how they're helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So while these look like a very cool prop, they are in fact for science. So what these glasses do is essentially a number of neurovestibular type of tests. So rewind, when we're here on Earth, our body is adapted to the gravity environment. And that means that folks essentially are able to orient to where they are located in physical space based on connection between the eyes, the inner ears, and the brain. And so what you do with this test is actually put on these glasses. And because
Can I try them on?
Yeah, absolutely. And so as you can see, Kate not only looks really cool, and everything's purple, but if you are to just use one at a time, the idea is that we're actually able to lateralize and localize different halves of the neurovestibular system to better understand when folks are doing a specific set of tests while wearing these glasses, how their adaptation to the spaceflight environment affects how they feel oriented and potentially might have space motion sickness, might feel dizzy or nauseous while they're in microgravity, and then once they return back to Earth.
So in terms of how, like, if I put these glasses on, how are you actually testing what I'm seeing?
Sure. So what would happen is that they would wear these glasses. They'll actually be doing some tests on something like this iPad. And then the results of those tests tell us basically which side and potentially more about what's going on with their neurovestibular system. Again, both in flight and then when they return.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana Dial from our Space Ops team here at SpaceX in Hawthorne. Thank you so much for joining us and showing us firsthand some of the science that the Inspiration 4 crew will be getting up to over the next 3 days. Let's check back in with Andy to see what's happening out on that pad.
Thanks, Kate and Diana. Super cool experiments. So right now, over the next couple minutes, the crew will be completing final inspections of the spacecraft, followed by hatch close. And so the crew is doing a sweep inside of Dragon to make sure there isn't any foreign object debris, what we like to refer to as FOD. Basically, anything that doesn't belong, that shouldn't be inside Dragon, we want to make sure that that is not there anymore. So right now is a view of the Dragon capsule and the crew access arm to the right-hand side. The Inspiration 4 crew members are inside the top section of the Dragon capsule right now. And for those that are just joining us, this is a view from Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Thanks for coming to watch.
Historic launch pad 39A. We are about 2 hours away from liftoff. Everything is looking great today. Weather is looking great, and the crew has just been
what a beautiful view.
Nothing but a bundle of joy since leaving the hangar, and super excited to be on a part of the mission.
It's crazy to think that, Andy, like you said, this is historic. It's pad 39A at Kennedy, and we can see the Atlantic Ocean there off the coast. And it's really crazy to think that, you know, just in the, what was 1969 was whenever we launched Apollo 11, which was, of course, the first mission that actually landed on the moon. And here we are a few decades later, I should say, launching the first orbital all-civilian crew. And we keep saying all-civilian, and what that really means is non-professional astronauts. So people like us four, and that are now going to space from the very same ground that, you know, Apollo 11 launched from decades ago. And it's, you know, just this transition and evolution of human spaceflight is so awesome to see. And of course, you know, we got a beautiful picture perfect background today. And it's just pretty incredible. And we're very thankful that we're able to, you know, introduce the next era of human spaceflight from this ground. You know, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and everyone inside that capsule knows that as well.
Yeah, we talked about the Apollo missions and the space shuttle missions. Since SpaceX took over the lease in 2014, we have also been making a little bit of history ourselves. In 2018, we debuted the Falcon Heavy rocket test flight. And for those that remember, that launched Starman.
Yeah.
And Starman is out there right now in his Tesla.
Starman is out there right now, floating through freaking space.
David Bowie.
Hey, Nescabian.
Last year, we also returned... last year, we also returned crewed flight from American soil with the Demonstration 2 mission with Bob and Doug. And we also had our first operational crew mission last November as well. So
yeah, and that's
continuing to march forward.
And that's actually the capsule that's flying today.
Yes.
That first operational crew mission, Crew 1, which launched in November 2020, that is the same capsule that the Inspiration 4 crew is flying in today. We like to refer to it as certified pre-owned.
Yeah, and everything that Kate and Andy just mentioned, you know, without all of that, we wouldn't be here today. And it's incredible to think that literally our 4 all-civilian crew members are sitting in the Dragon capsule right now, about to make the next step in human spaceflight. You know, we've always talked about, even before we were flying crew, that we always wanted to turn rockets into airplanes. Like, how do we turn, how do we turn such a difficult, costly flight into a more affordable and more often flight? And this is one step closer to that major step today. And just so exciting.
Hey, thank you for subscribing, Miss Gavian.
Absolutely. Yeah, reusability really is the thing that unlocks access to space.
32 months.
Personally, I am super excited for more people to be able to experience space, because there's something known as the overview effect. And that's essentially the effect that humans experience when they're able to look back upon planet Earth from a different perspective. And I honestly believe that, the more people that get to experience that, the better off planet Earth will be, as well as the human civilization.
Yeah, Dragon today is going to be flying 4 people. It can hold up to 7, so hopefully in the near future we'll see 7 folks flying in Dragon. It is, again, the first private spacecraft to take humans to the space station, and will be the first private spacecraft to ever take an all-civilian crew to space and orbit. So we've got a really cool animation here of our Dragon
love that orbit
vehicle.
I love that animation.
So as we mentioned before, the pressurized section, the section that we actually see the crew in.
Hey, there's the cupola.
The nose cone will open up and reveal the cupola, the observation dome. And we'll can't wait to see all the exciting views that they're going to see from there. And then if you look at the bottom portion, which the lighter side is reflecting towards us, we'll call it the Jedi side, and then the dark side now. I told you, Team Star Wars all the way. The dark side, which is actually the solar panels, which are one of my favorite things. We build them in-house here at SpaceX, integrate them onto the trunk, and that trunk will not be making its journey home. Unfortunately, that is not one of the reusable components of Dragon. It will be jettisoned prior to the capsule's re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere.
The capsule is what
thank
the
you very
crew
much,
will
Jade. I
live
appreciate
in for
that.
the next 3 days. The volume of the Dragon is about 328 cubic feet. So once they're in space and in microgravity, they'll be able to utilize that entire space. And with the cupola, they'll actually get just a little bit more room. They get a little bit more volume inside of that capsule.
Yeah, the Dragon capsule itself also is outfitted with some engines. We have 16 Draco engines built into Dragon. We also have 8 Super Draco engines built into 4 separate pods. Super Draco engines are used as part of the launch escape system. We actually disarm that after we get into orbit. When we're in space, the Draco engines take over, and that will do a number of things. Micro adjustments in orbit, as also raising the orbit altitude later on after they depart from the second stage of Falcon 9.
Yeah, so you mentioned orbit there. Dragon is actually going to be orbiting higher than the International Space Station and higher than the Hubble telescope. It'll be orbiting at about 575 kilometers. And like we mentioned before, that observation dome is brand new to this mission. And from that height, views from the space station are amazing, but this crew is going even further. In fact, I think we have some footage of the cupola, and which is one of my favorite things now on Dragon. It's just a gorgeous piece of hardware. Like I said, it's brand new to this mission.
Dragon SpaceX, stand by for transition to pad hatch closed. Please ensure that all items are secure from now through launch.
And copy that, SpaceX standing by.
There on your screen, we can see the pad closeout team closing the side hatch, which is one of the last visual things that we'll see here in the crew access arm.
The crew looks so excited. I think every little milestone, even if it's within 5 minutes, they get very excited. And I think they know what to expect. They've practiced this so many times. This is the real thing right now. So this is the real hatch closure before they lift off. and they will close the hatch, inflate a seal, they'll torque the hatch down and then perform some leak checks on that hatch.
Yeah, they'll inflate that seal and hold pressure to it for a few minutes and monitor that pressure to make sure that there's no leakage. And once we get confirmation of that, they'll basically put on
Looks like they're currently inspecting the seal to make sure that there's no debris.
Piece that will actually go on where that torquing area is, which you can sort of see it there behind the closeout lead number 9 there on the right-hand side. But yeah, this process can take a few minutes, so they must be super excited. They can still hear the voices of the closeout team, but they can't go to space just yet. We're just under T-minus 2 hours until that happens.
Now, Kate, as you mentioned, T-minus 2 hours. In the timeline, they're right on the timeline. The plan was T-minus 2 hours to initiate the closing of the hatch. So the good news is on the Dragon side, everything's running just as planned. Falcon 9 side, again, folks checking in on station, but still fairly quiet on the launch vehicle for about another hour. And not to dwell on negative, but we have had, in the case of one of the NASA crew missions, we closed the hatch. I think there's a little bit of debris got caught in the seal. We caught that, we opened it up. So there's even time in the procedure to be able to reopen the hatch if we have to, clean things up a little bit, close it and retest it again. That's why we've got all the way until T-minus 1 hour before the SpaceX egress team there that you see finally has to get off of the pad.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that was Crew 1 that occurred on.
Does look like that closeout tech is cleaning the hatch doorway there to make sure that there is no debris or FOD there.
You know, going back to something we talked about a little bit ago, the orbit of Inspiration 4, 575 kilometers higher than essentially any Americans have been since the Apollo flights to the moon. And before that, a couple of Gemini flights got up to about that altitude. But this is fairly rarefied air, so to speak, that the crew's going to. And one of the questions of Jared when they were picking the mission design was, why 575? You know, why don't you want to go, you know, typically we've been launching into 300 kilometers or so. But one of the purposes of this is to inspire. And you go a step beyond what we have done before. And so Inspiration 4, the 4th flight with people out of the U.S., or as Chris said, 39A, that's where Americans leave to go to space. And here they are today. And of course, Inspiration 4 representing the 4 crew members who are on board this mission.
Yeah, you make a good point with the fact that Jared wanted to inspire, and he's doing that in another way as well. You know, if you're watching on YouTube, you might notice that there is a donation button for St. Jude Children's Hospital. We are fundraising money for research and cures for childhood cancer, pediatric cancer, which is very near and dear to this particular mission. The individual that's seated on the far right-hand side of your screen there, that's Haley Arsenau. She is 29, and she actually is a pediatric cancer survivor. She had bone cancer when she was about 10 years old, and had a surgery to remove it and underwent very intense treatment. During that process, she decided that she wanted to grow up and be a medical professional and work at St. Jude. And that's what she does now. She's a physician's assistant there. And she is representing the pillar of hope on today's mission.
Right, and this mission is a fundraising event. So if you are watching, as Kate said, on YouTube, there is a donation button. So please donate what you can. We've so far raised about $133,000 on the YouTube channel so far.
So if you've just recently joined us, on the right-hand side of your screen there is the Inspiration 4 crew. They are in their seats. The seats have been rotated back to launch position. They have undergone comms and leak checks. And the view on your right is the Dragon capsule. That's where they're seated inside of that conical section. And we are awaiting a liftoff here in 1 hour and 53 minutes. Right now, the crew there inside that crew access arm is pressurizing the side hatch and basically working through the process to close the side hatch, lock it up, and retract the crew access arm.
Right now, we're just inside T-minus 1 hour, 53 minutes. Major activity coming up here as we are working the closing of the side hatch and then the leak check. Roughly about the same time, we ought to hear another series of communications checks. Earlier, we heard 3 comm checks from the crew down through the umbilical, which is the electrical line that connects the ground to the spacecraft. Then they also did a comm check over radio frequency to our ground stations there at Cape Canaveral. And then we also did a communications check through NASA's tracking and data relay satellites that are up in geosynchronous orbit, which we'll use during the mission. But one last group still to talk to is the SpaceX Falcon 9 launch team. So right now we've got hatch closed. You can see everybody peering at it, making sure it seems look good. And then we'll wait to start a clock and see that the hatch closure is good. And at the same time, listen to the crew eventually talk to Falcon 9 launch team. As we go past liftoff, you will hear call-outs. Falcon 9 avionics, guidance navigation and control engineer, propulsion engineer will be reading out status, and that'll be actually going from the firing room 4 up to the crew to let them know that things are looking good. So we're going to do a comm check to make sure all of those engineers can also talk to the crew and that each other can hear. Meanwhile, as we wait for comm checks and confirmations that the side hatch closure is checked out, successful, in the area we've got Falcon 9 team is clearing the flight hazard and the flight caution area, T-minus 2 hours. These are larger areas around the Complex 39A. So roadblocks are down.
Dragon SpaceX, we are commencing health checks for the launch escape system. Expect a momentary flight computer change, followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're now 1 hour and 50 minutes away from launch of Inspiration 4.
Dragon. This just changes what we call a command sequence on Dragon. They're not actually opening the side hatch and then going back to close it. That just changes states in their displays. But as I mentioned, we are clearing hazard and caution areas. No indications of any issues right now.
Hello,
We'll wrap that up in another half an hour or so. Falcon 9's looking good right now. Dragon obviously looking good. And the weather continues to cooperate. What we all like to talk about, but you can't do anything about it. With that, Andy, how are things looking on your end?
Yeah, our crew today, Jared, Cyan, Haley, and Chris have been training for this journey pretty much ever since the announcement that they had all been selected as crewmates for the Inspiration 4 mission back in March. What's super cool is that they're going through the same Dragon training as our NASA astronauts. And to prepare the Inspiration 4 crew for their mission, our teams at SpaceX have spent the last several months teaching the crew about orbital mechanics, how to live in space, and even running simulations of what a full mission could look like while seated inside of Dragon.
The Inspiration 4 crew has completed numerous simulations, including a 30-hour and 12-hour end-to-end simulation in our Dragon trainer. They trained not only at SpaceX, but they also did some centrifuge training. They flew fighter jets, and there's a photo from their fighter jet experience.
Yeah, I love the name that Haley got, the G Monster, because she pulled 8 Gs in the fighter jet, and she wanted it.
Right.
She's an absolute adventurer. I love it.
Yeah, that looks super exciting. They also completed a 0G flight, which simulated microgravity for a very short period of time, but there's a photo of them flying high there.
They all look like they're superheroes.
Right. Love it. They also climbed Mount Rainier in Washington together, which was a tough hike, 10-hour hike up the mountainside. But it looks like from that photo, they're almost enjoying themselves.
Yes. I believe it was a pretty strenuous hike up, and they also camped up there for several days at a ridge on Mount Rainier.
And then they even signed a Falcon 9 booster, which is their booster that is currently on the pad. And you can see them standing in front of the booster with their signatures there.
Oh, it's so cool they got to...
by the Crew 2 members that they are following in their footsteps with this. It's pretty incredible to see them. This team has studied nearly 100 different training lessons covering all aspects of the mission. At the end of training each week, the crew recorded video diaries of their experiences. In their own words, here's the crew talking about their various training over the last 6 months.
Jared Isaacman here, Commander Inspiration 4, and we're like 4 months and a day away from our intended launch date.
This week was really intense because we had a lot of the systems. We got to go into the sim.
Going through some CRM training and looking at what the mission overview is going to look like.
Talked a lot about teamwork and the SpaceX culture.
Week 2 of training at SpaceX complete. This was a heavy week.
I just completed another week at SpaceX and it was intense.
A lot of good building blocks. So you start in the beginning of the week with smaller things like losing comms to, okay, some circumstances are not so good, and then some get really bad where you have to plan an emergency deorbit, which we initiate ourselves in that.
But man, challenging. I didn't realize how much upper body strength I need, so I need to hit the gym the next couple of months and build up some more muscles.
Today was my favorite day of training because today was the medical training day.
Learn some more about some of the medical experiments we're going to be working with and helping to advance what we know about humans in spaceflight.
We've all contributed all sorts of fluids now to the greater scientific cause.
But the best part is we all got in our spacesuits together.
We got to wear spacesuits, strap into the simulator, and feel like we were actually going to space.
Hello again, Chris here, and it's August 2nd, 2021. 44 days from our launch here in September. Everything keeps going to plan, and it's been an incredible week.
Love that drawing in the background.
Working with SpaceX teams down at Kennedy Space Center, and then back here in Hawthorne this week for some sims.
This spacesuit that I got fitted for about 7 months ago, I actually get to see and try on and do a bunch of maneuvers in to make sure that it's comfortable and that I can move. And I am just so excited for this because, I mean, this is the spacesuit I'm going to wear leaving the planet.
I'm just so honored and thankful and grateful to be a part of this historic mission and a part of the SpaceX team.
Y'all are working so hard to get to Mars and beyond. We want to provide great data, and we're really excited to be part of this.
All right, well, thanks everybody for a fantastic time here in Hawthorne and also down at Kennedy. We've been doing training down there as well, so really appreciate everything you guys been doing.
This is my final call here from SpaceX, so Rook signing off.
Please begin the comm check with the crew.
Dragon, GNC on countdown 1. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear, GNC. How many?
GNC loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by propulsion.
And what you're hearing right now, comm checks.
Dragon, prop on countdown. Comm check.
Between Dragon and the Falcon 9 launch team in firing room 4.
Prop, loud and clear. Godspeed. Have a good flight today. Stand by for comm check with the avionics engineer.
Dragon avionics on countdown 1. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear, avionics. How many?
Avionics loud and clear. Stand by for the comm check by the ground segment engineer.
Say that again.
Dragon ground segment on countdown 1. Comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear, ground segment. How many?
Ground segment loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Dragon 90 loud and clear, launch control, how many?
Launch control, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer.
Dragon, Chief Engineer on countdown 1, comm check.
Dragon has you loud and clear, first, how many?
Have you loud and clear. Have a great flight. This completes our comm check.
Just inside T-minus 1 hour and 43 minutes. We've heard the comm checks between the Inspiration 4 crew up in the Dragon capsule, up at the very top on the picture at the left, behind where the crew access arm is. That's where Dragon is with the crew right now. They're talking to the Falcon 9 launch team, located in Firing Room 4, just a few miles just west of the launch pad. Got a great view out the windows. Earlier we saw a picture of the crew signing their names on the booster that has flown to space a couple of times, and that's an example of reusability of the Falcon 9. And we've talked reusability several times in the webcast, and our boss Elon Musk, he's made it clear for years and years, the holy grail of space travel, what opens up space for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization, is reusability. Without it, spaceflight is just not affordable. And I think, as we mentioned earlier, if you threw the airplane away after every flight, no one would be flying anywhere. So each step in SpaceX's history has been focusing on incorporating reusability step by step into our designs. First with Falcon 1, people may not remember, we did want to try to get the Falcon 1 first stages back so that we could look at them, not fly them again. We rolled that into Falcon 9, into Dragon, and now as we're going forward, even Starship program where everything there is reusable. So that's the holy grail. We've been attacking it a piece at a time. We're almost there. In today's flight, we're reflying both Dragon and the Falcon 9 first stage.
Yeah, the Inspiration 4 mission will launch today on SpaceX's proven and reliable Falcon 9 rocket, as John just mentioned. The booster that's flying today previously supported the GPS 3-4 mission for our Space Force customer in November 2020, as well as the GPS 3-5 launch in June of earlier this year. To date, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket has completed 138 total launches, with over half of those on reflown rockets. As for the Dragon spacecraft flying today, as I've mentioned before, it previously flew on the NASA Crew 1 mission in November of 2020. And overall, Dragon spacecrafts have completed 27 missions, including 25 visits to the International Space Station, 10 of those visits on reflown Dragons. So reusability,
Dragon SpaceX, we have a good side hatch leak check.
And copy that, SpaceX. Good side hatch leak check.
All right, that is great news. That was just confirmation that the leak check that they performed on the side hatch, everything is good. So that side hatch will remain closed until those 4 individuals splash down back on Earth in 3 days after orbiting for that duration.
Yeah, it is important, again, that we do perform that leak check, because we want to make sure that in the vacuum of space, the habitat inside of the capsule can withstand that pressure and make sure that again, the environment that the astronauts are in are hospitable. So that is, again, great news that we are continuing to march towards T0 on time. Everything seems to be going great so far. Kate, I do want to talk more about reusability. It is astounding that over half of our rockets are flown on reflown missions. I think one of the things